I want to tell you something interesting about Rabbi Yosef Matzas. There's a word we use, well-rounded. How do you define well-rounded?
It's like knowing a lot of different topics, subjects.
Knowing a lot of different subjects.
Covering
person
everything.
who has interests and
Everything.
Every angle.
person who has interests and knowledge and ability in a variety of different
There it
areas.
is.
Secular as well as religious.
Very few of our rabbis can go down under the label of well-rounded. Which is interesting, because in order to be a member of the Sanhedrin, one has to be well-rounded. How could one be on the Sanhedrin and not know about medicine or science or math or history or idol worship
Or language.
or language?
Yeah.
Being well-rounded used to be a Jewish value until people decided that God forbid we should study anything that's not Torah. There's a Rabbi Yosef Kapach, Alav Shalom. Kafich really is his name. And he writes that according to the Rambam, secular studies are not called secular studies. But the study of anything like science, like math, philosophy, history, is included in the category of Limudei Kodesh,
Really?
Torah study.
Oh, as medicine, of course. 'Cause
Yes.
Brachot, it said that one of the rabbis went to see a great sage, and he came back, and his teacher was asking him, "What did you learn?" "Rabbi, I'm so disappointed. I learned only medicine." He said, "Are you kidding? This is Torah."
Very good. So this, the Rambam says, if it's part of what you're learning in Torah, that it complements what it is you're studying in Torah. The Torah is greater than just a book with a text. It's a way of life. That's called Limudei Kodesh. The Rambam says, what is called? There's nothing called Limudei Chol. According to the Rambam, there's something called Limudei Havai, which are nonsensical studies. Certain philosophies the Rambam would put in this field. They're things that are not necessary. For example, I don't care if you disagree with me. Politics fall into the category of Divrei Havai. It's got nothing to do with Torah, nothing to do with the Jewish people, especially since they're not even Jewish politics. Then this would be called Divrei Havai. A person would be wasting of their time in order to discuss such matters.
It's just a topic to fight.
To fight, okay, even better. Football, someone wants to talk about a sports game. Divrei Havai, these would fall into the category. It doesn't mean that it's prohibited. As one of the rabbis said, find me a time that is not day and not night, and I will spend my time in these matters. This was his. There's so much to learn that falls into the category of Torah. Rabbi Yosef was, what made me fall in love with him is not just the things he says or the way he writes. It's the fact that people asked him questions on everything, on anything, and he had an answer to give them. There are letters of his. There was a king in Poland 200 years ago, and he had a daughter like this, and we forgot his name and his daughter's name. And he would write back the answer to this question. And don't think that Rabbi Yosef Matzas had Google or could look something up in that encyclopedia. This is things that he learned on his own, that he remembered, that he had access to. It's unbelievable. Today, you have people who write books, and myself included. When I wrote my books and I put sources in there, sometimes there's one book that gave me 3 sources. So I'll quote 3 sources. But really, I didn't do that legwork. I had another book that did the legwork for me. I'm not afraid to tell you this. Every author in the world who writes like that. He didn't have the Bar Ilan Responsa Project online. He didn't have HebrewBooks.org. He didn't even have a formal education the way you would consider an education. He didn't go to a school which taught him science and history and math. But he was proficient in art, in the areas of halakha, in midrash, in agadah, in kabbalah, in whatever you wanted to ask him, he had an answer for you. Most of his books are made up of questions that other people asked him, that he elaborated on, and some of his answers are novel because he knew things that other people did not know. Well-rounded. It's the feeling you walk away from Rabbi Yosef is well-rounded. So somebody asked him an interesting question. You know how many miracles happen on Hanukkah? What are we celebrating? Which miracles happen?
7.
The oil and the
The oil and
Maccabees,
the
and the Maccabees winning.
and the Maccabees winning the war. So it's called the miracle of the war. We finally got our independence, and the miracle of the oil in the Chanukah. What is the name of this holiday? Chanukah,
Yeah,
referring to the. What does Chanukah mean?
candle lighting.
I don't remember, we also use it for the term when someone moves into a new house. They have
Chanukat
a-
habayit. You say this in
Dedication.
Mizmor Shir Chanukat habayit, the dedication, the rededication of the menorah in the Beit Hamikdash. That's why it's called Chanukah. They tell you Chanukah. Okay, cute little things, but it's the truth. Chanukah. So they ask him the following question. Ra'ui lachkor. It's fitting to delve into this idea of Lama bacharu likrot hayamim ha'elu rak b'shem Chanukah. Why do they call this time period Chanukah? Why do they name the holiday Chanukah? Shehu romez rak lezecher chinuch hamenorah dafka. It's only reminding us of one miracle, the miracle of the Chanukah of the menorah. היה להם לקרותם בשם אחר. They should have had a different name. הכולל שני הניסים, נס הניצחון ונס החנוכה. The name that included both the miracle of the war and the miracle of the Chanukah, of the menorah. Why do they choose one that only mentioned the miracle of the oil?
The war in the end didn't end up being so productive.
Okay, so we'll talk about this.
HaShamayim
כי היו בקיאים בלשון יותר מנן 10 ידות. He said they knew the Hebrew language much better than we. If you would ask him what holiday what would you call this holiday? So if you don't mind closing that door when you... I don't know what name I would give it. It's like they're calling it what do they call this? Last year they had Thanksgiving or Chanukah. They called it Thanksgivaka. Yeah.
That's right, last year.
Remember this? It was a nonsensical American Jewish invention. But see, they came up with a name that could include both.
Really?
So we couldn't come up with a name for Chanukah that would include also the war and also the oil. Or Hayu Korino b'Shem Chag HaNitzachon. You would call it the holiday of our victory over the Greeks. V'tulo midi, and you wouldn't have to give it another name that includes the oil. Why? V'nes pach Hashem in dayom aseh adlaka v'notzach Shem. Because on Chanukah, you perform the mitzvah of lighting candles, which is to commemorate the miracle of the oil. So maybe you don't need a name for the holiday of the oil. Just call it the day of victory, in which we light candles that represent the fact that we lit oil candles in the Beit Hamikdash. Maybe it doesn't even need a name, Chanukah. It needs a different name that has to do with the war. The war is not being represented. What do you do on Chanukah that reminds you of the war between the Jews and the Maccabees? Which mitzvah? Between the Maccabees and the... I said it correct.
Dedication of the menorah.
Nothing. So he says at the very least, the holiday should have been called the holiday of the war, victory. And then the actions that we do on Chanukah will represent the miracle of the oil.
Candles, you do something. Victory, what you have to do.
I don't know. We're going to come up with something. Look how many things we come up with on Pesach. We come up with something.
Because the
It'll be a symbol for
dedication
everything,
of the
right?
temple couldn't have happened without defeating the Greeks.
Correct.
So it should have been the winning of the war against
Very
the Greeks.
good. Very good.
The fact that this one vial of oil, which was pure, survived, it sort of represents the fact that there was a survival of Judaism, which is more pure, against a very secular Greek culture. So in a way, it does.
But what about the miracle of the war?
But it's saying if after everything that was done in the temple, everything that was done to the Jewish people, this little vial of oil survived, which was highly unusual that it would have, but it survived. It was a miracle, and it represents in a way the fact that Judaism, the Jews, Hashem, connection to Hashem, triumphed over a very secular, antagonistic world in which they lived.
Is that what it says?
No, that's what I said.
Is that what the action says?
Well, I mean, if you're saying why do they call it Hanukkah, to me it sounds like
You're trying to answer the question.
yeah.
I'm trying to ask the question.
Oh,
The oil is supposed to last for a day. It lasted.
No one is denying that there was a miracle with the oil, and the oil has great
The
symbolism.
Beit
No one's denying
HaMikdash
this.
takes precedence over because it's a house of peace, and we don't use a weapon or anything made of metal to build it, as opposed to an act of war.
What about Purim and the miracle of Purim? What are we celebrating? War.
a lack of.
There's no miracle there. It's a war. The war was miraculous, but there's no other miracle. Why couldn't Rav Chanukah look more like Purim? Make a Megillah that you read on Chanukah.
Because we lost the temple.
Where?
Well, it was destroyed
When?
during the miracle of the Hanukkah.
Wasn't destroyed. It was just defiled. We had a Beit HaMikdash.
Oh,
It was just had idols inside of this.
Both the Purim and Hanukkah similar.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Similar.
Let's say, what is Rabbi Yosef Masaz doing?
What do you mean?
What is he doing right now? What's he trying to do?
Doesn't even think about it.
he's pointing out a fact.
Correct. He's trying to get you to think about what?
Of why
About why? Why are we calling it Hanukkah? Why do we call it something else?
This sounds like a question they would ask Al-Hanan in preschool.
That's why it's too simple to.
That's what. No offense to Al-Hanan in preschool. This is just. You see, here's the story. The Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his introduction to Misilat Yesharim, the way of the just, the path of the just. Rabbi Luzzatto writes, I'm going to tell you things that are obvious. But because they are so well known, they will come off to you as novel ideas. Do not think that I'm telling you novel things. These are just very simple ideas. You know, when my father came out of the hospital, I realized the things that we take for granted about the human body. Walking. To learn how to walk again. That's a crazy thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what do you mean learn how to walk? Achran learned how to walk when he was 1. And then, he doesn't have to think about it. You think about how you walk, no, but it happens. Someone who gets their
They
their
taught
walking
me how
damage,
to walk.
they learn again how to walk.
That's what I had to do.
That,
yeah.
But this is something that can be done, but you never think about it. It's difficult. All of a sudden you have to think. I don't remember if my heel goes first, or my toes go first, or my leg goes up and then down, or down.
Exactly.
Who remembers? I don't remember. Says Rabbi Yosef Masaz, you want to talk about Chanukah? You want to have a book about Chanukah? This is, I know the Jewish people. If I give some complicated class and sophisticated ideas, everyone's going to be so excited. If I ask them a simple question, like, why is this holiday called Chanukah? They'll get bored. Why ask me such a silly question? But you don't have a good answer to this question, do you? That's Rabbi Yosef Masaz's point, in general. The style is one of, before you got over here, what about we didn't build the foundation to the building yet.
Define your terms.
Very good. How many times have I been to a class or heard a class from big rabbis, people, but they're building on foundations that don't exist. So you told me it's a beautiful idea, but hey, we're not over there yet. We didn't get that far yet.
Confucius said the first thing to do in any study is to rectify the names. Define
Define
your
your
terms
terms.
and your foundational principles.
In the old writings, especially the Sephardic Rishonim, the books always started with a very simple and then sophisticated walkthrough of the basic overview of what's going to happen. These are the foundations. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. This is what's going to be discussed. So you have to lay the groundwork. That's what has to be done. You know, you are already used to it. But when I started teaching, people had a struggle with everything that I teach. I have to give an introduction. Look, I haven't even read to you more than 3 lines from Rabbi Yosef Masaz. I'm already giving you an introduction. An introduction to what? Introduction to his introduction on Hanukkah. That's the way you learn. You have to have an introduction. You should know, if somebody was smart, here in this room, when I mention a rabbi's name, and I tell you who was this rabbi, and I tell you something about that rabbi, if you would have in the back of your notebook, like Raoul takes notes, and you would write down each rabbi that I've quoted so far in the last 4 years, and their name, and the things I've told you about them, you could put together an encyclopedia of rabbis. You would never have to, when I say, oh, who was this rabbi? You would know already. It doesn't have to start. You can start now. I'm telling you, this is the way I learned. It's important to define your terms. Who am I talking about? How many times have I had a conversation? The Rambam says, see, yeah, but my rabbi says, I said, but the Rambam and your rabbi were not classmates. Your rabbi, with all due respect to him. But in his time, Rambam, I don't know, maybe the Rambam, maybe he learned in Lakewood. He doesn't know who the Rambam is. The Rambam, maybe he went to yeshiva in Israel and he doesn't know who he is. So you tell him Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, he tells you Rabbi Goldberg. There's no difference here. It's not his fault. I'm having a conversation with somebody, but I didn't define. He doesn't have any framework within which to work. Rabbi says, you want to talk about Chanukah? Let's talk about what happened with Chanukah in the first place. Because I personally have three answers to this question. Why we named the holiday Chanukah after the miracle of the oil, and we neglected to mention the miracle of the war in the name of Chanukah. Haichad, the first answer. Kines hanitzachon, the miracle of the victory in war, haya mesupak etzlam, was a gray area for them. They were in doubt as to this war. What does it mean? The Jewish people. They were in doubt whether imu mipnei kisharon maaseh haoma v'chashivuta lifnei Hashem. If it was because of how holy the Jewish people were and deserving they were for a miracle, meaning maybe Hashem saved us because we were worthy of it, because I deserved it. Or maybe mipnei shelo ratza Hashem lecharotam, that Hashem simply was trying to fulfill His promise of never destroying the Jewish people entirely. In order to fulfill His promise, that Hashem says, I will not destroy the... Remember, He tells us to who? Who does He tell Hashem? Who does Hashem say He will not destroy the Jewish people? Not to Noach. Get it out of your head.
Oh, sure. No.
Moshe Rabbeinu. Very good. Yeah. When?
After
Why?
the golden calf.
After the golden calf. He says, I will not destroy the Jews. It's a promise He gives Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you destroy them, destroy me from your book. Erase me from your book. Mecheni na misifracha.
He did erase the book.
The tablets, not.
The one book, the one chapter.
So?
He is taken out.
Here you find...
That's interesting, yeah.
They weren't sure. Was this a miracle that happened because we were deserving of it? Or because Hashem just has to take care of the Jewish people because under they were His kids? V'af gamzot. Lo mastim v'lo galtim lecharotam, because Hashem promised I will never hate the Jewish people enough that I will destroy them entirely. Sha'az en hanes chashuk olchem, because if that's the case, it's not such an important miracle. If, God forbid, there was a little child who was in the middle of the street and a car drove right by him and missed him by a centimeter, that's a miracle. But if the car is driving down the street and the parent pulls them out of the street, it's not necessarily a miracle. That's what the parent does. If the parent wasn't there was no way to save them, you would say, oh, that's a miracle. Are both miraculous events? Absolutely. A person's life was saved. But one happened because the child clearly deserves a miracle. One happened because there was a natural order in the world where Hashem says, I won't destroy my children, and therefore the Jewish people were saved. Maybe it could be that Hashem, so to speak, was forced to save the Jewish people, kivechol, so to speak. The Kehillat says davdavka, aval hem einam roim klal. It could be that they were not worthy of the miracle at all. But what happens now? This doubt that they had, whether we're worthy or whether we're not worthy, what solves this doubt in their mind? Oh, very good.
What's that?
Kasher ra'u, when they saw, shachar ha'tshua v'hashket, after the war was over and there was already calm and there was silence, Hosif Adonai Shenit Yado, Hashem made a second miracle for them. An unnecessary miracle. Lasot lahem nes gadol shel mitziat pach hashemen uvirchato, that they were able to find not just oil, but the oil that lasted for 8 days.
So that was like a confirmation
That they were worthy of a miracle. At that moment they realized, see, Hashem didn't have to do this miracle for me. It didn't have to be that way. But Hashem chose to make us what we would consider a minor miracle, finding oil. Not as great as winning a war. But to find this oil, this, the Jewish people saw as a confirmation that they were worthy. Hashem made a new miracle for them, a miracle that was not necessary, so to speak.
But I think what you're saying here, you said it like Rabbi Massas is doing with the obvious, But I think to most Jews, the nature of the war and whether it was miraculous or not is not really understood, because we only hear about the Beit HaMikdash and the oil and so forth. We don't know the nuances or details of the actual
story.
war.
Of the war itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you read in Al Nisim.
The oil was pure.
I know that they were
Fine,
greatly
fine.
outnumbered by the Greeks.
And the last 8 days, that isn't right.
They were greatly outnumbered by the Greeks.
Yeah.
And all the battles were always in doubt as to whether they could even survive.
In the days of
Right.
Matityahu, the Chashmonai,
Most people
son of Yochanan, the Kohen Gadol, and his sons, the wicked Greek Empire rose up against your people Israel to make them forget your Torah and to transgress your mitzvot. Then, in your abundant mercy, you stood up for them at their time of distress. You fought their battle, you judged their claim, and took their revenge. You delivered the strong into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the wicked into the hands of the righteous, the impure into the hands of the pure, and the rebels into the hands of those immersed in your Torah. You should know the Lubavitch Rebbe reads something very radical into this text. Lubavitch Rebbe says, how do you call them rebels? The Greeks were not rebels, they weren't Jews. What are they rebelling against? They were rebelling against Hashem. They're not believers in Hashem in the first place. There must be that here it's referring to a civil war. The Jews who fought the Jews who were rebelling against Hashem.
Well, they said that the high priest was named Jason, and he was already
Well, this is a
like a
critical
reform.
right. This is many
high
of
priest.
the Jews became Mityavnim. They were Hellenists. The pure into the hands of the impure in the hands of the pure. You wouldn't use the word tameh about a person impure, about a person who cannot reach a level of purity. You never say a Greek, oh, he's pure. It's not the term you would use about them. Therefore, it says the Lubavitch Rebbe, there was a civil war. In addition to the war with the Greeks, there was a war between the Jews that happened here.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to see more about this, I'm sure you could find it online somewhere. The Rebbe talks about this. You made a great name, okay? You made a great salvation, deliverance, okay, fine. You did miracles and wonders to them, and we give thanks to your great name, Sena. This was not a simple war. You see, the problem is we live in a world where people look at the War of Independence in Israel. 600,000 Jews, 50 million Arabs. Was that a miracle? It was a war. That's a miracle. What else? What are you going to call a miracle if not that? What could be? You're not talking 600,000 warriors. 600,000 men, women, children, Holocaust survivors, old people, Kabbalists. Not that it wasn't Navy SEALs over here going out to war. This was the survivors of the Jewish people, those who barely made it to Israel. That's a miracle. The story of Hanukah is a real miracle. Majority and a minority. Any war that has a big number versus a small number, and the small number wins, is a miracle. But you're right, people are not so familiar with the nature of this war. ולכן, and therefore, מפני שנס פח השם אין הורה להם הוראה גמורה, שנס הניצחון היה על כישרון מעשיהם, and once they saw that this oil was a confirmation that they were worthy of this miracle, לכן בחרו לקרוא את הימים האלה רק בשם חנוכה. They chose that even though it was a small miracle, but it was a small miracle with much greater meaning than the big miracle. Al nes Chanukah Menorah Shira Banes B'Hashem, and they called it Chanukah to remind themselves of the Chanukah oil that we found when we were Chanukah Mizbeh, when we brought back the menorah, because that is in essence what confirmed that the war was a miracle and not just Hashem begrudgingly saving the Jewish people.
What confirmed it again?
The fact that Hashem made this miracle of the oil.
Oh.
It wasn't necessary to the Jewish people's survival. We could have waited a few days, made our own oil. It wasn't such a big deal. But Hashem made this miracle, so to speak, went out of his way to show us, no, you're worthy of this miracle.
And this is a rare thing in Jewish history after the time of the Levian, to have something that, here's a clear sign from above. We don't have too many incidences.
Correct.
Now the war itself lasted several years, or 2 or 3 years, or
I don't know. I don't believe it was years.
at least a year, or
I'll tell you the next Hanukkah. It's a great question. How long the story of Hanukkah lasted?
because then they were without the use of the temple for some period of time. So you're
Correct,
right,
but
they could have waited a
that
few more
wasn't
days.
necessarily because of the war. If I'm not mistaken, the war was not so long. The war was not so long. In fact, there were just some things that set the Maccabees off.
Yeah.
And there was a certain amount of occupation they were willing to handle. There was just a certain point where this was too much. This already was too much. There's a midrash, and I haven't been able to find it since, so I ask you don't quote me on it. But I once saw such a teaching. Midrash, or was one of the Rishonim wrote, I don't remember who. I haven't been able to find it though since. That said, that we say the miracle here happened at the hands of women. That's why women are also obligated, the miracles of Hanukkah. Which woman, which miracles? They say that the Greek governor made a decree. I don't know if you know that many Hasidic women, not all, not all at all, but some, shave their heads after they get married. Even though they wear a wig or a scarf, they have no hair. Listen, I'm not for such a custom. You know me long enough to know that this is not my not my genre of Judaism.
Is against.
Okay, well they had a reason for this, and one of the reasons I read was that there was especially in the area of Satmar in Hungary, there was a military rule, and the general's rule was if a Jewish woman wants to get married, they have to sleep with the general first.
Right.
In order to make themselves not becoming to the generals, they shaved their heads. And that's how they got away from this persecution. A similar story happened in the times of Hanukkah. This governor in Israel made a rule that anyone who got married had to come to him first. And it became time for the wedding of the daughter of the Kohen Gadol. Meaning these Maccabees, their sister. And it was the time before her chuppah, and before that she was on the way to this general. Her way to the general, she stops. And like there at the chuppah, go to the general, come back to the chuppah when you're done. And she gets up and starts screaming. She says, I don't understand. How much longer are you going to wait? Your own sister is going to go to this general, to this governor, and you're going to be quiet. And that's when they stood up and said, Mila Hashem Elai, who for Hashem, for us? And they went to war against the Greeks. But something was the instigator. Something was that what triggered the war against the Greeks. And if I'm correct, and I could not be, but if I'm correct, the occupation may have lasted for a long time, but the war wasn't as long as other wars took. The fact that we're successful, I mean, who else overthrew the Greeks? Who else gained their independence back from the Greeks?
They were the world, they had world domination at the time.
Yeah. I'm not familiar enough with this part of history, but who else fought the Greeks and got back their independence? Not once the Greek Empire fell, but while the Greek Empire was standing.
Yeah.
This is a real miracle. The Jewish people the world could only look and be blown away at this. It's perhaps why part of this miracle is publicizing it outside of one's home. To let the people know. It wasn't an internal Jewish miracle. This was a miracle that set a trend, or at least that set a precedent in world history that we were not going to allow ourselves to be under occupation for that long. Not at the hands of a Gentile army. If only we had the courage today that we had then.